Everybody, welcome to today's episode of the Course Building Secrets podcast. I am thrilled you are here. Hey, in this episode, I want to talk about all things gamification. So if you have seen or if you haven't seen, I'm doing a Gamify My Course Camp challenge coming up in August. And I want to talk about why am I talking about gamification? Everyone's like, whoa, wait a minute, you help us scale online course businesses. Why would you be talking about gamification? And I want to talk a little bit about it today because it's such an important concept. And gamification, if you're not aware of what it is yet, it's really just about the act of adding game-like elements to your program, your course, your even your marketing and your advertising. And so when somebody's talking about gamification, that's what they're talking about is really how do you help add some additional attention to the experience that you're creating for your prospects, for your customers, so they actually take the action you want them to take. So that's all the whole purpose of doing gamification is to really look at how do you reward, recognize, and just really pay attention to where somebody is in your experience and how do you get them to take action or take the next step to where you want them to go. It's a very strategic process. It's not about kitschy little things. It's not just about badges and game tokens and leaderboards and whatnot, right? Like those are some of the mechanics of gamification, but it's actually a very strategic process. And so I want to get into that a little bit today. And I'm going to start our conversation today with just an analogy. So often, one of the biggest challenges that people have when they are either getting in the game of online programs, selling digital products, or they're kind of trying to grow and scale what they're doing is this concept of how do you get people to do the thing you want them to do, right? And if you're not there yet, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, you will at some point. So there's kind of two different camps, right? There's the people that they're not exactly sure how to do that, so they just pour as much time and attention into all of their people as possible, which ultimately at the end of the day is not scalable and leads to burnout, right? Because you're trying to do all of the things for all of the people and you don't actually have a methodology or a way to go through and create an experience for them. And the second type is you kind of know that you want to create an experience, but you're not exactly sure how to automate it, right? How to scale it and make it into something that you can consistently apply across all of your customers without reinventing the wheel every single time. So again, I want to just address that today. So one of the things that I always think is super interesting when people are trying to create an experience is remembering that you're creating an experience for a person. So, so if you think about if you're creating a live event, right? So you are planning a live training, a live workshop, a retreat, a conference, whatever it is that you're planning, and you plan that in person where you want people to actually be in the room with you. You don't just decide on a date and then just assume people are going to show up. And then when they show up, you're just going to start talking at them, right? That's not how it works. You would never do that because you have people, real live people just staring at you going, what are you doing? There's no plan, there's no strategy, there's no agenda, there's no, they're not, people are concerned with how to find the bathrooms and when they're supposed to come and when they're supposed to leave and what the, when the breaks are and how they're going to eat and all of those basic needs that people have, right? So when you show up with them in person and you've sort of promised them this is what's going to happen for the money that you've just given me to do a conference, a retreat, a training, a workshop, whatever it is. They have an expectation and you have an expectation, right? And one of the biggest things that happens is that when people are doing online courses, programs, events, workshops, whatever you want to focus on, is that they sort of forget that, right? They forget that there's a human on the other side of that experience that they've created. And so either they show up and just blast information at someone, which that's not going to be effective to them and their experience. Or they, show up and they've just given them a ton of information, like in videos or whatever else, and that's the whole experience. And again, you wouldn't do that, right? Like, imagine if you had a 3-day workshop, for example, and you're like, great, thanks for coming. I really enjoy that you're all in the room with me today. Now I'm going to go ahead and just turn on this video for you to watch for 3 days. And, I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to head out and go do something else. And, I'm just going to put you in front of this video and, just sit here for 3 days and have fun, right? Like, you wouldn't do that, right? And you certainly wouldn't um you wouldn't even consider doing that, right? But that's what we do in an online environment because we're not thinking about that end user. So it's super important to create an experience. And the easiest way to create an experience is to think about how people are going through your program, how they're going through your workshop, whatever it is that you're having them do, and think about it in 3 different parts. What is it that they need at the beginning to get acclimated, to get onboarded, right? If you're doing a live session, typically this is where you're talking about logistics, right? Like, you can show up at this time, your breaks are going to be at this time, here are the bathrooms, here are the exits, right? Like, all of the things. And then someone's like, okay, great, I have my basic needs met. Now I can sit back and enjoy the session that's coming up, right? So that's the very first thing is like, how do you need to onboard your people? What does that look like? How do you set expectations? How do you show them how the whole thing is going to go, right? One of my favorite and sort of frequent issues that most of my customers have when they come to us is they just assume that someone is going to be able to figure out how to navigate through their program, or someone's just going to like show up on their Zoom call and know how to find everything without telling them, right? So the very first thing that you should be thinking of is, how do I, set expectations? How do I teach people how to get through my program so they can be successful? That's in 2 different ways. One could be a success path, right? Like, here are all the steps. And then here's, the end point, right? Like, this is what you can expect as the transformation or the result, and give them a clear big picture path. Adults like to have the big picture, and so you could give them that path. The second is like, how do they get through your program, right? When do they log in? How do they log in? Where do they go? What do they do? Are they supposed to go here? Do they go here? When do they go? Like, how does that all work? And don't make the assumption that they're going to know. And I'm going to tell you this right now is, if you have someone else building these things for you, it is your responsibility to know what the customer experience is and be able to help them through that, your customers through that, when they first begin. So don't just assume that because you don't understand the system that your customers are going to understand the system, right? Like, come on now. So that's the very first piece, is that number one is, what's the onboarding experience that you want to create? Everyone wants to be part of an experience. Everyone wants to feel welcome. Everyone wants to feel like this is a situation, an experience, a program, an interaction, whatever you want to call it, that is personalized for them. So what does that look like? There are lots of different ways to do that. When we get into camp, we're really going to dial in, like, how do you create these different pieces for an onboarding experience? What does that look like? Both from kind of a basic standpoint and from a more advanced standpoint. So we'll get into all of that in the first component, which is how do you onboard someone? How do you take them from being a prospect to a customer to a raving fan? What does that look like, and what's that experience? Again, if you think about, a live event, most of the time you're going to be standing at the door welcoming people in, or someone is going to be standing at the door welcoming people in. There's a very specific strategic intent to welcoming people into your world, whatever that looks like. The goal as you're scaling is to automate that as much as possible, but still make it feel like it's a personalized experience. Again, we're going to talk about that in a Gamify. Okay, so then the second thing is at the end, right? So someone finishes your program, they've gotten the results. What's their experience? Are you celebrating? Are you personalizing the celebration based on the results that they've gotten? Are you asking them to participate in some sort of um, ending point, right? Or are you asking them to take the next step? Are you recognizing where they are and how much progress, how much they've actually accomplished in your program? This is the point in time where you take somebody from being a customer and move them into a raving fan. Do you give them more responsibility or some type of sort of result at the end, right? So if they've gotten the results, they have kind of gone through your program, they've been successful, do you help them become ambassadors to help all your new students? Do you help them find a job or find whatever it is the outcome was, right? Like, what is the end game that you're able to then help move them to? Sometimes it's helping them now tackle the next challenge that they have, which is kind of ascending them to your next offer. But maybe you want to ask them to bring additional people in. Maybe they get to join a special group. Maybe there's something that's happening, right? But being very intentional about what happens at the end of your program is just as important as being intentional about what happens at the beginning, right? Think about like if you're going to that live workshop and then someone's like, okay, we're done. Great to see you. All right, bye-bye. You're kind of like, oh, okay, bye, right? Like there's no there's no next step. Like we've just spent a lot of time together. We've developed a relationship. What is the next step? What's going to happen when I get home from this live event? And how are you going to continue to nurture me? How are you going to continue to build a relationship with me? How are you going to continue to keep me in your world? Again, people want to feel special. They want to feel recognized and they want to feel like they are a part of something bigger. And so gamification is a great way to do that in a lot of different ways. And again, that second bucket, which is like what happens at the end. And it's not just about selling them, right? Like it's not selling them into the next thing. It should be just a natural progression where they're like, great, like let's keep going, right? There should always be um, a celebration point and then a next step that incorporates them into a greater responsibility, a greater piece of momentum, whatever it is for them as they go through that. Okay, and then the third thing is sort of this we call it control the dip, but it's this the time in between, right? So people start out, they're super excited. People at the end are super excited because they've gotten results, but there's a whole lot of time in the middle here where it's literally not just you standing up and throwing information on a video and giving them an opportunity to listen to you at nauseum for however long you want to teach about information, right? That's not what it's about. Again, consider if they are in the room with you, what are they going to want to experience? What are they going to want to do? So one of the best ways to think through this, and at this point, like I really encourage you as I am going through this, like jot down some notes because this is the gold, right? And again, we're going to dive into specific examples, and I've got some models for you within the camp that we're going to really go through. But here's the deal: is that when you are thinking about what to teach or how to fill, like just like imagine it's a live event. What you're doing is you're looking at kind of where they're coming in and what they want to get out of it at the end, right? What's the transformation that you're promising? And then you're going to put together the step-by-step path. What is the strategic path that will help them get to where they want to go? One of the most impactful and easiest ways to deal with this is to look at the steps, right? So usually it's about 7 to 9 steps. People can't handle more than that. You could do it in levels, right? So you may have 3 levels and 3 steps at each level, that kind of thing. So that's a whole nother can of worms that we talk about when we talk about building your proprietary methodology in Learn Academy. But basically, you're putting together steps. within each of those steps, there's a milestone, right? And so with gamification, you want to recognize the milestone that they're taking. Now, the milestone is not just like, hey, did they watch my 20-minute video? Mm-mm. Their milestone is, did they take the action that you wanted them to take as a result of that step? Very small nuance, but it's very, very different, right? And so if you give somebody a badge for finishing a video, essentially what you're doing is it's like that participation award for all the kids, right? Like you don't actually have to do anything, you just have to participate, and then we're going to give you a trophy. Worthless, right? Like there's no actual achievement in there. There's no accountability for taking action. And learning isn't a passive activity, right? Learning is active. So in order for something to change, you have to actually do something to make the change happen. Okay, so when you're thinking about gamification and you're thinking about badges or some sort of recognition, it doesn't have to be a badge. It's just like that's kind of a gamification thing. But I encourage people to think about badges in lots of different ways. It could be acknowledgement. It could be a gift card. It could be a million things, right? But basically, what you're doing is you are recognizing them for taking the action you want them to take. And so again, in that step, what do you want them to do, right? If you are asking them to um, create a Facebook ad, then you recognize that they've taken the step of making an ad. It's not just thinking about the ad. It's not just listening to the video. It's actually, have they created the ad and pressed on, and now the ad is running. That is a recognition of performance that is a result of the step that you're asking them to do. So that's a very, kind of the middle part, right? Is where are those significant recognition points that you want to make sure that you call out. The other kind of ninja trick is where are they gonna get stuck, right? Where does it get really hard, or they have to get out of their comfort zone, or there's something that's going to be difficult, right? There's usually about maybe 3 or 4 places within your program, within your steps, that people struggle with more than other things, right? Like maybe turning on an ad isn't a big deal, but maybe having the ad convert, maybe getting a sale, maybe, like there's like things that are a little bit more difficult. Those are the places within this kind of control the dip area that we call out and really make a significant effort to recognize. And all of this can be automated based on where people are going to get stuck, right? And so when you look at gamification, and this is why gamification is super super powerful, is that so if you think about your program, you have your program is like this, right? So you have a curriculum, you have kind of the step by step of how you're helping somebody get from point A to point B. And then there's this layer on top, which is the experience layer. And the experience layer is when things actually will happen, right? Because left to their own devices, a lot of people won't actually finish the courses, right? So it's 97% of people don't finish a program. And they don't finish it because they don't want to. They don't finish it because either their attention is somewhere else, or they've run into a roadblock and they don't have anyone to help them, right? And so anticipating those roadblocks and putting gamification around it that helps to motivate and recognize people for taking action is the kind of the secret sauce that differentiates courses or programs that are successful and those that are not. And it doesn't have to be super complicated. It doesn't have to be a lot of tech. But again, if you think about, you take it all back to where I started, which is if you have people who show up in a room and you are helping them for, let's just say it's a 3-day workshop, and you stand up there and you just like make stuff up because you don't exactly know what you're going to teach yet, and you just start talking and you're giving them information and you're blasting them for 3 days, they're not actually probably going to walk out of there happy, right? They're not going to get a result. They're going to be overwhelmed. They're not going to know because there's no organization. There's no kind of like path that they should be following, and they're going to get frustrated. So there's either going to be a ton of questions, people are not going to know what to do, or they're going to ask for their money back, right? Because they're not going to stay. People are going to look at you like, what are you doing? Like, you don't have there's no agenda, there's no plan. You're just like, you want me to come to this, and then I show up and there's nothing there, right? And so often this is the problem with our programs is that we're not thinking about the fact that like we actually should be thinking about standing in front of people and helping them get results. So how do you get results in a workshop? If people are live, you're able to see their questions, you're able to help them work through activities like in a workbook, or you've kind of put them in groups, or you've done different things, right? So they're actually taking action in a live workshop. So how do you manufacture that in an online environment? It is exactly the same thinking, is exactly the same approach. And so the question becomes, what do you need to put in place strategically to make that happen? And typically it's some super simple kind of changes that will make the most significant impact to how you help people, how happy they are, and then how they become customers for life, right? Because it doesn't take a lot, but it takes some strategic thinking, and it takes a little bit of magic from gamification to be able to orchestrate an experience online that helps people succeed. So hopefully this serves you today. I really encourage you to show up to Gamify My Course Camp. Again, it's coming August 7th through the 11th. There should be a link kind of below somewhere. But I really encourage you to come, even if you have a program that's working really well. You may get some tips and tricks. If you don't have a program yet, you also would benefit from this, because we're going to start thinking about how do you put together a program, right? Like, one of the things that that always strikes me as fascinating is when people start. Either they start with a tool that somebody has told them to buy, and then they have a blank screen and they just have this need to fill it with stuff, or they've heard somebody say, "Oh, you just grab your phone and start recording based on your experience." And the problem with those two approaches is that they're not actually going to lead to a sustainable business. You may get some sales, right? You could be really good at selling, but if people come into your program and they see that, they're not going to stay. And so you need to have both pieces. And so we're going to explore that at camp. So I'm super excited to just invite you to join us. We're going to have a scavenger hunt. We're going to talk about those obstacle courses that will come up. We're going to talk about all sorts of other things. How do you hit the bullseye? How do you know you can guarantee results for each one of your students? All of those different things we're going to explore during our free Gamify My Course Camp Challenge. So hopefully this helps you get like, what is gamification? Why is it important? And then like, what are the little kind of drivers and like little nuanced ninja tricks that really will help you take your program, your business from one level to another. So there you go. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Hey everybody, are you a business owner ready to streamline and scale your business? Imagine solving the biggest business challenges with clarity, a strategy, and a clear plan. Hey, I'm Bryan, and I want to invite you to take the first step towards transforming your business with a free 30-minute discovery call. This call is an opportunity to discuss your goals, identify key challenges, and learn how my mentorship program can help you achieve the success you're aiming for. In just a half hour, we'll explore how you can scale your business by enhancing your authority strategy, engagement strategy, and retention strategy. You'll get personalized advice and a clear path forward. Ready to take the first step? Click on the link below that's in the show notes to book your free discovery call now. I hope to talk to you soon.